Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. As usual, we're so happy to be holding these webinars, to be holding this space, to be joining. I'm going to close my door so that you don't all get to hear my crying babies. But the joys of this way of working, right? But we're really happy to be doing this for the field. We will continue to do this. Jonathan and I just got off a call about community development block grants, which hold some potential for the arts, and it will depend state by state what that looks like. We'll explore that. We're exploring every possible avenue of support for you, both federally, statewide, locally. We're really pushing into all the possible policy interventions, funding interventions on your behalf that we're able to do. Couple updates there. One, I will just add on to Dimmy's note around the FAQs that we're creating. I know that everyone is seeing so many webinars, so many FAQs. I want you to know that what we're trying to do at the Alliance is cut through the noise a little bit, right? So I think we're trying to create things that are specific to the cultural sector and specific to Illinois. And so, for example, with that small business loans FAQs document we created, it covers the federal programs through the SBA, it covers state of Illinois programs, and it covers some Chicago specific programs we've heard about too in terms of small business loans. So we're really trying to push on every different level to provide you the best information that we can, because we know there's lots of different sources. And of course, those FAQs are also covering both independent contractors and the gig economy for all you individual artists out there. And then we're also covering that from an organizational lens, both for profit and nonprofit. So we're really trying to be as comprehensive for the creative sector as we can be with those FAQs as they roll out. A couple other things. I know many of you have heard about, applied for, donated to the Arts for Illinois Relief Fund. We are thrilled to see the response to that. We are continuing to fundraise for that. We've had to take some time to process the first round of applications for individual artists, but we will reopen that fund. It's going to reopen on May 4th. We're going to have time to refuel that fund, that portion of the fund, for the next 3 weeks. The organization side of the fund will pause on April 15th, and then also reopen on May 4th. So for those organizations out there that still have not applied, this is a statewide fund. I do not want people to think this is exclusively for Chicago. We're trying to get as many unrestricted funds as possible geographically so we can spread this good will around the state. Please do apply on the organization side, and then for you artists who have not gotten your applications in, that will reopen for you on May 4th. So that's the fund update there. And then I also wanted to let you know, we're hoping these webinars would be possibly an opportunity for you all to connect with one another around issues that you're facing during this crisis. We've had to keep them pretty focused on the topics at hand just due to the excitingly large demand. We know they're necessary and valuable. So we're creating a private Facebook group. I don't know if private's the word, Dimmy, you can correct me, but a closed Facebook group that is open to members of the creative community, and we'll be rolling that out later this week so that you all can connect with one another, that you all can surface your challenges and issues. We'll be looking to use that also as a mobilization space around our policy interventions and our policy agenda moving forward. So we're really hoping that you will try to move or participate in that moving forward. So, and you'll hear more about that in the coming days. And then, oh yeah, just the context for the webinar today. We're going to be focusing on unemployment. And we will continue doing, trying to do the deeper dives into particular issues that are interesting and relevant to the creative sector as we move forward with these. At some point, they may shift into more of a policy agenda setting conversation as we move toward the state level. And just answering a quick question around the fund in the chat. There is not necessarily, I mean, some of the funds within, some of the funders to the Illinois Arts for Illinois Relief Fund have restricted their funding geographically, but everyone can apply through the same link. So just go to Arts for Illinois, and yeah, and they're all handled through the same spot. So you can just submit your application in one place there. We have seen some other funding opportunities pop up for other places, both either nationally or outside of Chicago and Cook County. And Illinois Humanities has recently launched a small fund there for smaller organizations, and we've publicized all of those on our resources page and through our weekly communications as well. So I will turn it over to my friend and colleague, Chris. Thank you once again for joining us, Chris. Always good to see your face in these policy briefings. And I know Chris is gonna introduce our guests from Franczek and set the stage for the conversation today.
Hi, thank you. Am I on? Yes. So I'm really glad to be here to help out Arts Alliance Illinois. I did talk to Jonathan today, and the Arts Alliance Illinois staff is well aware of the challenges with applying for and receiving unemployment benefits. And the presenter today is Melissa Sobata. Melissa Sobata is a partner at Franczek P.C. Melissa represents and advises public and private employers, as well as educational institutions throughout Illinois on labor and employment matters. Melissa has represented employers in state and federal court, as well as the Illinois and National Labor Relations Board. We're honored to have Melissa as a presenter, and we want to thank her for her expertise. All right, Melissa, you're up for a presentation.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you everybody for having me. Give me 1 second, I have a presentation here. I'm gonna try to get it set up so you can all see it. Still getting used to all of these bells and whistles of presenting online. So I was asked to come in and talk to everybody kind of about some of the ins and outs of what's going on with all the unemployment, how to file claims, the new legislation that's recently been passed by the federal government. I've kind of been become our firm guru on unemployment matters, so much so it's literally been coming up in my dreams. So hopefully the information I am sharing with you today will help you in navigating these waters so that you don't have the same nightmares that I've been having the last few nights. So there we go. Go to the next slide. So just some of the basics regarding general information about applying for unemployment. Where do you go? What do you do? Kind of navigating the basic waters here. So the all unemployment is run out of the Illinois Department of Employment Security, IDES. They have a website. Currently, all of their local offices are closed. So if you want to file a claim, you have to do so either online or over the phone. I can tell you from my experience, from what I've been hearing from both clients as well as family and friends who have unfortunately also been impacted by the current situation and are trying to file claims for unemployment insurance, that the website is at times very overwhelmed. People have had a lot of difficulty getting through over the phone. From what I've heard is people have generally eventually been able to get through online to get their application in. But my recommendation would be, if you're gonna go and apply, that you do it in non-peak hours. So either early in the morning or later in the afternoon or late evening. I think the online system is shut down from 8 to 10 p.m., I believe it says, so that they can process the day's claims. But one thing that IDES has done to try and mitigate some of those issues is they have limited the days based on the first letter of last name on when individuals should apply. So anybody with the last names A through M should apply Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. And N through Z can file Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And then Saturday is open for people who can't fit in those time frames. So just try and abide by that as much as possible to try and alleviate some of the increased demand on the system. So generally, in order to be eligible for unemployment in Illinois, is an individual who has been separated or lost all or part of their work through no fault of the individual employee's causing, and they are able, available, and actively seeking work. So typically, these benefits are not available for independent contractors, self-employed, or gig workers. Now, I'm sure you've all heard through rumors and news articles, etc., that the unemployment benefits have been expanded to cover most of those employees, and that is true, and we will get to that a little bit later on in the presentation. In order to be eligible for benefits, you have to register with the state. They have a job search site when you apply for your benefits that they prompt you to go through, and certify on a weekly basis that you are actively seeking appropriate and available work. Currently, that's typically defined as work that you're qualified to perform or you normally perform that can be done in the home. So what are your base benefits? So these are the benefits, weekly benefits that you are entitled to under Illinois law. And there's a specific calculation that the state law uses to determine what each individual benefit will be. There's not like one set of benefits that everyone in a certain industry or anyone with a certain wage or any of that is automatically gets. So the calculation the state uses is they add the 2 highest earnings in the last 4 quarters and then take 47% of that amount and divide it by 26. And then that is what the individual's weekly benefit will be. There are maximum benefits in the state of Illinois, and that's $484 for an individual, $577 for an individual with a spouse that they are supporting, and $669 for an individual and child, a dependent child. So some additional information, the emergency IDES rules say that benefits are available for individuals who are either laid off or furloughed. So furloughed employees, typically those are employees who are laid off or sent home from work on an unpaid status for a set period of time. And typically benefits, they're not eligible for benefits because they'll be returning to work. Under the emergency rules, they are now eligible for benefits. Benefits may also be available for individuals who are working part-time or who have had their wages reduced. And that whether you will be eligible for them or not, if you're in one of those situations, will depend on if the wages that you are earning in a part-time or decreased salary or wage status exceed your weekly benefit allotment as calculated, as I explained on the other page. So if your wages that you earn are higher than your weekly benefit, you won't be eligible for benefits. But if they're lower, your wages, whatever you earn, will offset your weekly benefit you're otherwise eligible for. So as I said, a furlough is generally someone who is working or receiving pay but remains, or not working or receiving pay, excuse me, but may receive some benefits, has an expectation that they're going to be returned to the job. And individuals who are furloughed and intend to return to their regular workplace as soon as it opens, under the current IDES rules, it says that those individuals don't need to apply or register with the state that they're actively seeking work. But when in doubt, I would just advise to go ahead and do so anyway, so your claim doesn't get held up for further questioning. And then a layoff is when someone their employment is being permanently terminated for typically a financial reason or a lack of work. So employees who are laid off are generally eligible for benefits and will need to register with the job site and certify on a weekly basis that they are eligible and actively seeking appropriate and available work. So under the new Emergency IDES Rules and CARES Act, as I mentioned before, there are some expanded benefits. So now under the Emergency IDES rules, additional individuals are also eligible for benefits, and that includes individuals who are laid off or their workplace is temporarily closed. Again, that's like a furlough. Individuals who are confined to their home due to government required or recommended quarantine. And there's a little bit of gray area there. And I don't think it probably really impacts many of you as much as some other industries, because under the governor's stay-at-home order, there were a number of exceptions for essential services who, if they were deemed essential service, they would not qualify for this expanded benefit. Again, I'm guessing most of you probably are outside of the essential services, so you may fall within that category. Additionally, any individuals who are confined to their home because of a diagnosis of COVID-19 for themselves, a parent, spouse, or an individual that they must care for in the home. Now, the Federal CARES Act also expands benefits even more. So that includes individuals who are caring for a family member or a member of their household with a COVID-19 diagnosis. Note that that only applies if the member of the household is unable to care for themselves. It also applies to any primary caregivers who need to stay home because a school or facility of care is closed and the individual is unable to work, so they can care for their child. If somebody is able to do remote work while they're caring for their child, this would not apply. It also expands benefits to individuals who can't start scheduled employment because their the place that they had a job offer from is closed due to COVID-19 reasons. Additionally, it applies to anybody who becomes a breadwinner due to the death of a spouse from COVID-19, individuals who need to quit because of COVID-19, or their workplace is closed because of COVID-19. You can see there's quite a bit of overlap between the CARES Act and some of the emergency rules that the IDES previously passed. And then probably most important to a lot of you, it does expand benefits to independent contractors, self-employed individuals, and gig workers who are unemployed, partially unemployed, or unable or unavailable to work because the COVID-19 public health emergency has severely limited their ability to continue performing their customary work activities, and therefore such activities are suspended. Note that individuals who fall under the expanded definition on the CARES Act who are seeking unemployment in Illinois, I just checked the IDS's website this morning, and they're currently advising anybody who is now going to be eligible under these expanded definitions to hold off and wait to apply for benefits because they're still trying to figure out how they are going to implement this. So check the IDS's website frequently. On the main page that you go to, they have big news releases, links to their current news releases at the top of the page, and you can go there and just check on the status of their accepting applications. So some additional things to keep in mind is the certification requirements. You may be required to certify on a weekly basis that you meet the expanded criteria under the CARES Act. And you also may need to certify on a weekly basis that you are actively seeking available and appropriate work. And again, that's typically right now interpreted as work that you typically do that you can do at home. So some other things that the CARES Act and the emergency rules took care of is there's no longer a waiting period to begin collecting unemployment benefits. Under the normal rules, there's a 7-day waiting period where you don't get any benefits. That has now been waived. Additionally, individuals who now qualify for extended benefits for the additional reasons set forth in the CARES Act, those may be retroactive to as early as January 27, 2022, or excuse me, 2020. God, I hope we don't get in a situation where we have legislation expanding to past 2020 here. The extended benefits do expire though on December 31st, 2020 at this point in time. So other things you probably heard about this $600 additional weekly benefit. Yes, that does apply to any individual who is eligible to collect any amount of unemployment. And all individuals who are eligible to collect any amount of unemployment will get this additional $600 weekly benefit. And that includes people who may be part-time or have their salaries reduced. So that's going to be a big help. This does mean that some individuals will end up collecting more on unemployment than they would have otherwise working at their regular job. These benefits are, though, only available for a limited period of time. They'll only be available for a period of 4 months or until July 31st, 2020. The last week that they'll actually get paid out is the week of July 25th, ending in July 25th. And then there's also they expanded the time frame for which individuals can collect unemployment. Typically under Illinois law, it was 26 weeks, but now it is expanded to 39 weeks of unemployment compensation. So that's an additional 13 weeks. And that also will expand for individuals who may have already used all of their eligibility period for the year prior to this incident, prior to this current situation. They should also be eligible for an additional 13 weeks of unemployment in addition to that $600. That's another area that the IDES website is telling people to wait. They're still figuring out how they're going to implement that. So if you're an employer, you need to be aware that you need to email or mail out a specific form that's available on the IDES's website. It's called What Every Worker Should Know About Unemployment Insurance. The rules say it should be mailed out within 5 days. Obviously, we've been going through this crisis for a much longer period of time than that right now. So if you have not sent that out, I would just say to do that as soon as you can. Just some other things you should be aware of. There are some offsets for your unemployment compensation that would potentially disqualify you from unemployment compensation if it exceeds your weekly benefit amount. That is what we talked about, pay for part-time work if it exceeds your weekly benefit, vacation payout, retirement income, subsidy pay, like if your employer has decided or you as the employer have decided to try and pay part of your employees' salaries, whatever amount that is would be offset against their unemployment compensation. That does not, though, include severance pay. Other offsets are workers' comp or wages in lieu of notice, though that probably doesn't come into play much at this point. Okay, so the status of implementation of the expanded benefits in Illinois, as I kind of already alluded to already several times. It has not implemented the expanded benefits to individuals who may qualify under the additional eligibility criteria or for individuals who have otherwise used all of their eligibility. And IDES is going to be issuing further guidance on this as things go on. I think I skipped one. Oh yeah, sorry. Check the IDES's website daily as things are rapidly changing. This $600 additional benefit has been implemented and individuals should start receiving it this week. All right. So briefly on some other nonprofit concerns that we've talked a little bit about. Many of you may or may not know in Illinois, nonprofits have a choice between either doing contribution to the unemployment insurance on a monthly basis for future claims, or they can do it on a reimbursement method where they reimburse the state 100% of the cost for any claims that are made. A lot of nonprofits are on the reimbursement method, and immediately had this this onslaught of unemployment claims raised a lot of alarm bells and concerns for a lot of nonprofit companies. So we have, I looked at the law, and unfortunately, you currently cannot apply to switch from reimbursement to contribution retroactive to January 1. However, there is relief under the Federal Care Act, and it has been approved. So what that provides is it actually, earmarks 50% of the unemployment reimbursement for government and nonprofit entities. And that basically provides 50% of funding that are attributable to government and nonprofit entities. We're still waiting on additional guidance from the DOL on this, but this may only apply to nonprofits who are doing a reimbursement as opposed to contribution to unemployment. That's kind of how the law reads, but we're still waiting on guidance. Additionally, if you're a nonprofit, groups that are concerned that this is insufficient funding, that the additional reimbursement you're still going to have to pay is going to be a death knell in your ability to go forward. You might want to group together and see if you can lobby state legislature for additional help. The additional funding is going to help to reimburse for any claims that are made between March 13, 2020 and December 31, 2020. The $600 additional weekly benefit, you should know, are fully funded by the federal government. So you should not be responsible for any reimbursement for that. It's not clear if any unemployment claims that are filed based on the expanded definitions of eligibility under the CARES Act, if those will be reimbursable or will be fully federally funded. The law says they're 100% federally funded, but we're still waiting on DOL guidance on that aspect of things to kind of explain a little bit more of how that will be implemented and how it'll impact nonprofits. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Now I'm happy to take questions.
All right, we got a lot of really good questions. Thank you, Melissa, for the really good presentation to start us off. Can you talk about, if you know, how employment ties in with the Paycheck Protection Plan?
It does. So basically, and I am not a paycheck protection expert, and I apologize for that, but we have looked at it, and basically employers have been evaluating which is going to be more beneficial, keeping somebody on the payroll by using the Payroll Protection Act or program, I should say, or just laying everyone off and letting them collect unemployment. And it's really, there's not like a straight answer that I can give you, because it's really going to be dependent on each individual employer and their needs, their employee needs, how much each employee would be eligible for under unemployment benefits, and the feasibility of continuing to work during this period of time.
Right, thank you. That's a pretty good answer. It's one of those cases where you kind of have to look at it and see what might be best. Thank you. Next question, is there a minimum weekly benefit that the state will give out? For instance, if someone's weekly benefit, based on the formula you mentioned, comes out to something very low, like $10, will the state still pay that out?
It's actually under Illinois law, there are minimums. I believe the minimum for an individual is 50, I'm going off the top of my head here, I've looked at it, but I think it's like either $51 or $54. So you'll get whatever the minimum is, and then the additional $600 on top of that. And obviously the minimum, if you have a spouse, is going to be a little bit higher. And the minimum, if you have a dependent child, is going to be a little bit higher as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Will there be back pay for unemployment during the period leading up to the application, since it has been so difficult to submit an application as a freelancer? Or more than difficult, it's not possible actually right now. Yeah, so do you know if there'll be back pay for those that are waiting to apply?
We're waiting for the guidance from IDES. I would suspect likely there will be some going back to whenever the initial eligibility period was, but I just don't have the full direction from the Illinois Department of Employment Security to give you a good answer that I'm 100% confident in. But if you check the website, the IDES is putting out guidance as it becomes available.
Thank you. Very simple question here. I'm not sure. It says, it's asking, did the max weekly base change from $471 to $484?
Yep, in 2020, as of January 1, 2020, it increased.
Thank you. I don't know what UC stands for here.
Unemployment compensation.
There you go. Thank you.
I said I've been having nightmares.
Unemployment something. Does 50% UC reimbursement apply to self-insured organizations?
I would assume so, but the DOL has not issued any additional guidance on the application of that aspect of the CARES Act to public and nonprofits. So we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, and then the next question is from an artist. Like many artists, I am self-employed and also have a part-time job. Would I qualify for unemployment as a self-employed person and as someone who has lost my job due to COVID-19? And how would I file for that?
They would look at your income, I believe, without the guidance from the IDES, but here's what based on my knowledge of how they typically do things. I believe what they'll do is they'll look at your total income from both jobs in the last 4 quarters and look at the 2 highest quarters and then apply that formula and determine what your eligibility will be, your weekly benefit will be, I should say. That's what we'll check the IDS's website when they have their further guidance, but that's how typically when they're looking at somebody who's employed by 2 employers, they combine the incomes and look at that. So I would assume they'd probably do the same thing here.
Makes sense. Thank you. So if you apply and your weekly benefit amount comes out to lower than the state minimum, you don't qualify for benefits and must wait for the PUA benefits to roll out?
No, I believe you get bumped up to the minimum state benefit, and then you'll get that minimum, which is the 51 or 54, and then the 600 in addition to it.
All right. And from the claimant's perspective, if they are a sole proprietor, can they use their unemployment benefits in their PPP application as a calculation of income?
I don't know the answer to that. That's a very good question. If you want to email that over to us, I can coordinate with our PPP experts and see if I can get you a better answer on that. I'm not a PPP expert to be able to answer that. Sorry.
No, it's all right. Thank you. I'm trying to make sure that they aren't all PPP questions. A few of those. Let's see. I need to update my unemployment claim. Do I need to file a new claim, or can I just update it before certifying?
You should be able to update it before certifying. But I know the website's been a little bit wonky, so if you need to reapply, you can do that. I just have some concerns that it might get kicked out because there's 2 applications. I would try and update before certifying.
Hmm. I haven't sent in my 2019 income tax yet. Will they use the last 5 quarters of 2018?
No, it has to be the last 5 quarters since the application.
Got it. So they're not looking just at your income tax statements.
As far as you self-report your income, and typically what they do for when you have an employer, they then circle back to the employer to confirm the accuracy of the information. If you're self-employed, the rules don't really address it at this point in time. So my guess is they will likely look at your income taxes.
Do you know if there's any specific documentation that will be utilized or required for freelance gig workers to apply for unemployment benefits?
At this point in time, we're still waiting on IDS guidelines.
Yep. So this is a question about the taxing of the benefits. For instance, if you apply for benefits, you have the choice of electing to have taxes taken out in advance of receiving your benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Does the $600 federal benefit come pre or post tax?
My reading of the law of the regs that came out from the DOL on over the weekend is that I believe it will be pre-taxed. I know the $600 is taxed for sure, and it's the reading of the regs seem to direct the states to take the taxes out ahead of time, but I don't know exactly how the state has implemented that.
For an organization, are you doing okay with all these questions? They're coming at you.
Yeah,
All right.
okay.
Yeah, you're having some good answers. It's very helpful.
Great.
For an organization that hires freelancers, what part of the unemployment can we expect to be charged?
The $600 will not go against your experience rating. So if you are an employer who pays contributions, the $600 will not be chargeable to you or impact your experience rating for your the determination of the contribution for next year. But what's not clear is whether the expanded benefits, anybody that applies and qualifies for the expanded benefits, whether that's going to impact your experience rating. The thing that I found interesting was in reading the regs, there were 2 regs that came out last weekend, one addressing the $600 benefit explicitly, and in there it said this will not impact an experience rating. It's fully federally funded. And in the reg that came out talking about the expanded benefits, the additional categories of employees, it said this is fully federally funded, but it did not say it won't impact an experience rating. So that is the best I can tell you.
Mm-hmm. Question from Jennifer, and this is a PPP question, so you may not know the answer. She's hearing that independent contractors are able to apply tomorrow. Does the organization apply or the independent contractor?
That I can't, I don't know. I'm sorry.
That's all right, that's all right. From another freelance artist, Melissa. I have a W-2 from a job in October 2018 when I left in December 2018 to solely freelance. Should I apply for unemployment with this or wait to apply as a freelancer using solely 1099s?
Now you're making me do math and going back to figure out where the last 5 quarters were.
So she left in 2018. So yeah. From January 2019 on, they would be freelancing.
Yeah. No, I think you apply as a freelancer because the difficulty we have here is the quarters. technically the fact that this can go retroactive to March of this year, and that's in the first quarter versus the third quarter here, or the second quarter, I should say, that we're in now in April. Technically, there might be a little bit of gray area there, going back to the prior to the end of prior to January of 2019. It would depend on when you officially kind of became unemployed. If it was in April, then I would just use your 1099. If it was if it was in March, I would see where your benefits are going to be higher.
All right, here's a good one, and I think you'll know it, but I don't. If your income tax statement is based on being an independent contractor, then you have likely written off much of your income for that year. Is unemployment unemployment eligibility based on your post-deduction income?
That is a good question. And that's not in any of the DOL regs that came out. So that's going to have to come from the state when they issue their regulations on how they're going to implement it. And I think that's why there's still a delay from the IDES in request or accepting applications for these expanded benefits, because there are a lot of questions for independent contractors and methods of calculation that are unique.
All right, that's another question. Should I, as sole member LLC, apply for unemployment and then seek PPP, or do I have to choose which one I apply for? I now feel I should sign up for unemployment first after listening to your valuable advice, and then apply to PPP.
Yeah, again, that's a similar question that we had before. I need to circle back with my team to see if you can do both. I don't know the answer as far as how that would apply for the PPP. So, I will certainly talk with it amongst my group of experts on PPP and try and get some answers and send them over to Arts Alliance to distribute.
Thank you. Do you know if there's a date that Illinois and/or the federal government considers the beginning of the COVID crisis?
It depends. I mean, there's the $600 emergency benefits are they go back to the last week of March, but the expanded benefits go back to the end of January. So I don't think there's one set universal date that they consider the beginning of the crisis.
Right. All right, we have another question about employees and employers. How does the employer report the employee's refusal to be rehired to IDIS since the offices are closed? This is likely to happen given the additional $600 weekly benefit. Many employees will make more on unemployment than working. Yeah,
so you're going to have to get, obviously the IDES sends you notices to your registered business address of all claims that are made. And unfortunately, you're going to have to get your hands on them because there is that limited period of time in which to protest claims. And obviously, if somebody is refusing to work, reasonable work that's been given to them, or even work from home opportunities that have been given to them, and they've refused because they're going to collect more on unemployment, they're ineligible for unemployment, but you do have to protest those claims. So you'll have to figure out a way to get them from your business.
Let's see here, just maybe one or two more. This one, let me see, this one is kind of long. Demi or Jonathan, do you see any other questions that we should make sure we answer? or ask?
Hey, Chris, this is Jonathan. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I think that we can try to answer some additional questions that we've received to date. On the ones that involve the PPP, we can seek to get back to people on that and kind of coordinate with Melissa and her expertise with respect to the relationship between it and unemployment insurance.
great. All right, then Melissa, thank you so much. Just one more question, just a general question. If you have an idea or an answer, are there any general challenges you've seen with applying outside of the individual artist and independent contractor situation, and any solutions or any general advice to folks that are trying to navigate this?
Other than, you know, kind of trying to apply during off-peak hours, that's really the only thing that I've been able to, that seems to have been helping people that I know who have had trouble trying to get into the system. Definitely apply only on the days that correspond with the first letter of your last name. And I know, I mean, the state, I can tell you for a fact, I have a friend who works for IDES that, you know, their employees are literally working 7 days a week processing these claims and trying to get things out and done as quickly and fairly as possible. It's just a very unfortunate scenario that everyone's facing right now.
Right, it's tough time. Melissa, thank you so much. Really, really, really helpful. Folks that we did not get to your questions, Arts Alliance will take a look at them and try to get them answered. Again, Melissa, thank you so much for your time and for answering these questions. Really good expertise on this stuff. And it's really complicated. It's really helpful to have some good answers.
Great, thanks so much for having me. And I'll try and follow up and try and get some of those PPP unemployment questions back to you guys with some answers.
Right, thank you.
Thanks.
And yeah, take care.
You too, bye-bye.
And now I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan, who will bring us back to some previous questions, getting some answers on those. He's our resident expert on policy.
Well, I don't know. I have a halo over my head kind of right now, if I can move that right. But, no, I just want to echo the thanks to Melissa. We really appreciate her expertise and that she took the time to cover this incredibly vital issue that's also very complex. And so we also want to thank our board member, Mike Hernandez, who has been providing great leadership on this too. So thanks a lot, Melissa. We are kind of getting towards the end of the time here for our webinar. I just want to say to people, if they want to stay a little bit afterwards, you're welcome to do that. We have the line open for a little bit, so we can stick around and answer some questions. Before we break though, or first of all, if you get off, there's two messages that I just want to share with you. The first is that keep at it. We know that it's a frustrating time and that there are long waits and websites that are freezing up because of the volume. And so we support you in hanging in there, where we will be advocating that more resources and attention be given as much as possible, given the constraints to dealing with these issues. So please know that we're with you. We also, secondly, I just want to add that we will continue these weekly webinars dealing with additional subjects. If you have specific things that you want addressed, always feel free to email me or others. Will follow up with contact information as well as with the FAQ. So we're advocating for you. We're seeking to be your voice, and hang in there, hang in there. But this is like a postscript, I guess. This is like the post program. I did want to take some time now to answer questions that we have received in previous webinars, particularly the questions that have been asked by multiple people or that have really been emphasized. This is a very fluid policy environment. The federal government is seeking to move $2 trillion very, very quickly to a lot of people through systems, frankly, that have not been built to handle this amount of money and that have not been built to move this amount of money this quickly. Moreover, a lot of these systems, whether it's the unemployment system or the small business system, are seeking to engage our sector, particularly gig workers, self-employed, that they've never engaged these communities before. And so they're struggling to do that. That doesn't make it any less frustrating at all. And so we want to provide you with some answers to some of the questions. The biggest question that I have received to date that we didn't necessarily have the answer for on the last meeting deals with the PPP, and you've heard that quite a bit. It stands for the Paycheck Protection Program, and it's actually a small business loan program that is new. And one of the questions that was asked deals with how do you count 1099 workers towards the requirements of that loan. Now, a PPP loan is forgivable, so it is a forgivable loan. However, there are two requirements, well, there's more than two requirements, but there's two main requirements that deal with employee count. The first is the loan says that in order for it to be forgivable, you have to keep your employees on payroll for the 8 weeks after the loan is made. So the question of that then is when they talk about keeping the number of employees on payroll, do they mean head count, as in 2 part-time employees equal 2 employees? Or are they talking about FTE or full-time equivalents, where 2 part-time employees would equal 1 employee, right? 1 FTE. And I've asked that to several DCEO and other experts, and the common theme of the answer so far is that it's the number of FTEs. At least if you go through the PPP form, the report is that's what it appears to be asking, is the number of FTEs and not the head count. So that's good because it allows for some variation potentially in the employee count. The second PPP issue has to deal with payroll. And what it says, in order for the PPP loan to be forgiven, at least 75% of that amount must go towards payroll. So that begs the question, the pay that you give to contract workers, does that count towards that requirement of 75% towards payroll? And unfortunately, and this is something we disagree with, it does not. So when you are calculating the payroll to determine if you meet that 75% threshold, you cannot count pay that goes to 1099 workers. And whereas the first one, it's still a little bit fuzzy, that first example I gave of, this one is not. The interim rules that have been put out by the SBA clearly says that you cannot count that. It's something that if there is a phase 4 of legislation, the phase 3 kind of being the CARES Act, we'll certainly seek to to try to address that. So again, it's a fluid situation, but hopefully that gives some indication of the way to go. What I would say is that the PPP program is a first come, first served program. And so if you have any question about it, do it, apply for it. That's kind of the main message of this thing. As frustrating as a lot of these processes are, take advantage of them now, particularly the PPP, because it is first come, first serve. A second question that we've received multiple times in the past webinar, and actually I think the webinar before it, was can you receive the PPP small business loan and what they call the economic injury disaster loan at the same time? Those are the two main loan programs for small businesses. And the answer is yes, you can receive both of them at the same time. Apply for both of them. I would encourage you if you need it and you are eligible for both. However, there's an important however, they don't want to see double dipping. So you can't apply the loan to the same payroll expenses. And the main message in all of this is keep good documentation of where your funds go, so that when you need to report back, you can do that. We still have some people on. I haven't scared them away yet, so I'm just going to roll with it. Do we still have time, Demi? Can I still answer a couple previously asked questions?
Jonathan, you answer all the questions.
You just want to go until we're down at 0 participants?
Yeah, all the way to the end.
Or we could be at 1 participant, and that's probably my mom or some, who's just, who knows. Okay, so let's go with it, because again, it's such a fluid situation that we want to see, when we say we'll get back to you, we mean it. We're really trying to track these things really closely. The other question that I did receive multiple times that we at first weren't sure about has to do with sick leave. So the previous questions that I mentioned are all about small business loans, which is a big part of the CARES package. However, the bill that came before CARES, what they call the phase 2, the Family's First bill for short, provided another really important benefit that I feel is kind of getting overshadowed in a lot of these discussions. And that is an expansion of paid sick leave and an expansion of family leave, the FMLA. And one of the questions that we had was, and I'm just going to read it directly. It says, I'm noticing that employers will get reimbursed through tax credits for offering paid sick leave due to coronavirus, which is true. Employers need to, or they have to provide 2 weeks of paid sick leave, but employers, and that includes nonprofits, will get reimbursed from the federal government for those costs. But the question, as condensed in this one person's question, says, does this leave require the person to be sick? Or does the leave, do other types of situations count? And essentially, in order for this provision of paid sick leave to apply, the employee has to be unable to work or telework because they are in quarantine or an isolation order. Their healthcare provider has told them to self-quarantine, or they have symptoms and they're seeking a medical diagnosis. If that is the case, that's directly related to the COVID. If that is the case, then the employee is entitled to their regular pay. That's up to $511 a day with a max of $5,110. But other employees are also eligible for that paid sick leave if they are caring for an individual. So it's not themselves, but they're caring for an individual who has had to quarantine or is being affected, basically the things that I indicated above. Or if they are caring for a child who is home because the school is closed or because the daycare provider is closed. So that applies as well, and that's something that you'll want to think about. The only difference is that in the latter case, when the employee is caring for a child that's out of school, or when the employee is caring for a child that's not, daycare isn't available, they're not entitled to the full regular pay that they would get. They get 2/3 of their regular pay. And I believe the max on that is $200 a day, and I think it's $2,000 over the benefit period. So don't forget that that's a benefit too. And again, it's one that applies to nonprofits, and it's one that nonprofits can get reimbursed for. And actually individual self-employed people can apply for this too and get kind of apply the sick leave to them and get an income tax, refundable income tax credit to help cover it. Another question that we said we would get back on, and is an important one, deals with another thing that I feel like has been a little bit overshadowed, and that is some of the state programs. We've focused a lot on the PPP and the economic injury disaster loans, which come out through the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. However, they originate with the federal government. Well, the state of Illinois has taken some very active, proactive steps to establish the state's own loan funds. And these funds, two in particular, apply specifically outside of Chicago. So they don't apply to the city of Chicago. And one of those that we've been asked about at least once or twice is what's called the Downstate Small Business Stabilization Grant Program. Now here it's different because it's not a loan. It's an actual grant. You're just right at the start. you're not expected to pay it. And this is a program that the eligibility requirements actually prohibit small businesses that are located in the city of Chicago. It's a loan program, though, that probably, again, I don't want to give like legal financial advice, but it's a more technical program. It's a program that you need to partner with your local government. So your local government actually kind of puts it forward for you. So it's one that's not going to probably move as quickly as the other loan programs, but it might be worth looking into, particularly if you have a good relationship with your local government. It should be noted that certain small businesses in certain counties, even though they're south of Chicago or outside of Chicago, are not eligible. And one of the questions that we got about the stabilization grant down fund was from DeKalb. And unfortunately, DeKalb is one of the counties, along with Cook, Madison, DuPage, McHenry, Canton, Clare, and Lake. Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, it is here we go. So the DeKalb County is eligible, but the metro area of DeKalb is not. So there's some weird things going on here, but it has to do with the fact that the 8 counties I mentioned, Cook, Madison, DuPage, McHenry, Kane, Clare, Lake, and Will, the reason small businesses are not eligible there is because those counties have a special already established designation with the originator of what these funds are. And there are certain metropolitan areas that are not eligible either. And we have that actually listed in our FAQ, but unfortunately DeKalb is one of those metro areas that does not qualify. I still, however, though, if you have a relationship with your local government, I still would contact them and talk about the option of partnering and looking at resources. Because as Claire mentioned earlier on in the webinar, there are funds like the Community Development Block Grant Fund, and we were just on a discussion about that does offer opportunities for arts organizations, cultural organizations to receive funding or loans during this time, even though those programs are not solely focused on the arts. The other thing I do want to mention is that the other state fund is referred to as the Small Business Emergency Loan Fund. That will likely move more quickly if you're looking for support. Again, this is a loan fund that is targeted at small businesses outside of Chicago. You actually can't be in the city of Chicago in order to apply. The other requirements is you have to have less than 50 workers and less than $3 million in revenue as calculated in 2019. You do have to document a need. You have to show that you experienced at least a 25% decrease in your revenues as a result of COVID. But they're solid loans. It's a 3% interest rate. You do, though, have to show that 50% of the loan is going towards payroll. And we're trying to get clarity right now on the eligibility of nonprofits for this and sole proprietors. So we're looking into that, and we'll update the fact sheet as we get these information. Those are the main questions that I've wanted to focus on today. We still have some people on. Demi, should I talk about some other stuff? I feel like I'm on AM talk radio. Like I just talk. Like I should just keep going.
Yeah.
I tell you what.
Just to keep folks engaged, if you're enjoying Jonathan right now and you want him to keep going, just raise your hand. I think he's going to do it anyway. But
am I?
Just show him how much you care right now.
I just want to make people, I just want to remind people that we really want to get the. I as a policy person have never had it before, where I've seen the struggle to answer questions this much, because so much money is moving so quickly through so many new programs that are so complex, and even the people who are running these programs are looking for answers from the federal government. So we're committed to keep tracking this for you, because you guys do good work in the creative sector. We want to make sure that we can help you as much as possible. Did anyone raise their hand?
Yeah, we had like 8 raised hands. Look, they're going up again.
Yeah, that's like my mom and then 7, but the only 7 friends I have or something like that. I don't know.
I'd say maybe one more point and then
Let's
we'll
do
wrap
that.
up.
Let's do that. In terms of kind of what I think is one of the important points, and I'm actually going to bring up this slide. Can I share my screen? Let's see here.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Can you see my screen now?
Yep, perfect.
So I'm going to present a PowerPoint now that I was planning to provide, and here it is. Okay, I presented it. We'll give that information out. No, it wasn't the most important information. What I wanted to provide, though, is this website right here. Claire mentioned that there is a relief fund, the Arts for Illinois Artist Relief Fund that has been started. That is statewide. National Relief Fund has also been started focusing on individual artists. It's called the Artist Relief Fund. It was established by some national entities, artistrelief.org. It provides $5,000 in grants to artists facing dire financial emergencies due to COVID. So I'm sure that the demand will be very high. It covers the nation, but that's something also that you want to look into. And since I gave some time to downstate, I'll also mention there's the Chicago Small Business Resiliency Fund and information on that. That's specific to the city of Chicago, and information on that is available through our FAQ document. That's the most pertinent information for today, Thursday, April 9. And I just want to thank everyone for taking the time. And we really do, it's a very tough time, and we'll continue to work 24/7 to try to represent you and give you voice as a sector, because you do invaluable work.
Jonathan, can you just remind folks where the FAQs are?
Well, they're all in Jonathan's place.
Some are.
We'll send them. We'll send the link to the FAQs in the email along with the recording of this webinar probably by tomorrow.
Yep. Yeah, and so thank you, Chris, for moderating, and Demi, and we also say thanks again to Melissa and to Franczek and Mike Hernandez, and thanks to the DCO and the departments trying to make this happen. We'll continue to represent you. So thanks, everyone.